Welcome to the Group Dentistry Now Show, the voice of the DSO industry. Kim Larson and Bill Newman talk to industry leaders about their challenges, successes, and the future of group dentistry. Visit groupdentistrynow.com for more DSO analysis, news, and events. Looking for a job or have a job to fill? Visit joindso.com. We hope you enjoy today's show.
I'd like to welcome everyone to the Group Dentistry Now Show. I am Bill Newman, and today on this podcast, we are going to talk about orthodontics, and specifically DSO orthodontics. And we have two wonderful guests here. We have Dr. Bob Bray and we have Chris Vranas, and they are both from SG Management, also known as the Schulman Group. Give you a little bit of background on both of these individuals here. And then they're going to talk about Schulman Group, SG Management, and what's going on in the ortho industry as we start to move from COVID to a maybe not post-COVID, but new normal. Oh, sorry, I can't believe I said that. Anyway, welcome both of you gentlemen. Appreciate having you both here, and go give you a little bit of background on Dr. Bob Bray. Bob practices in South Jersey with his partner, Dr. Bob Tarby. They have 6 different locations for braces orthodontics. And I think, Dr. Bray, you mentioned you have a home office as well, so 7 total locations, correct?
Correct. Thank you.
Excellent. He is an active member of his local community. Dr. Bray serves currently as the chairman of the hospital board of Shore Medical Center and has been involved with fundraising for the hospital for over 20 years. He earned his orthodontic degree at Eastman Dental Center in Rochester, New York, and completed a Master's of Science at the University of Rochester School of Medicine and Dentistry with a major course in genetics. He is also the president and CEO of Schulman Group, and he's been the president and CEO since 2017. Past president of the American Association of Orthodontists, AAO, facilitating relationships with foreign orthodontic societies that lead to meetings with AAO and the Australian Orthodontic Society, British Orthodontic Society, European Orthodontic Society, Japanese Orthodontic Society, Chinese, Taiwan, and the Indian Orthodontic Society. I might have forgotten something there, but it sounds like you pretty much globally. Dr. Bray is the past president of the American Association of Orthodontic Foundation and is currently the chair of the Keystone Society fundraising. He is the diplomat of American Board of Orthodontics, the ABO, and locally served on the Brigantine Board of Education, including serving as the president of the board for 11 years. And actually not too far away from where we're located, serves at Temple University School of Dentistry in the orthodontic department as the associate clinical professor and also a visiting professor at the Eastman Institute of Oral Health, Rochester, New York. So again, thank you, Dr. Bray, for being here. We also have the executive director of SG, that's the Schulman Group, and that is Chris Vranas. And Chris is a CAE, and we'll talk about what that is in a second, but he is responsible for the day-to-day management of SG Management LLC. Responsibilities include the development of preferred supplier programs, continuing education, DSO marketing, and member programs and services. Chris also supports the acquisition of orthodontic practices. We're going to get into that later on in the podcast. Chris is a 30-year veteran in the association management field and has been in the dental industry for quite a while. Previous to being at SG Management, he was the executive director at the ADSO, the Association of Dental Support Organizations. And then prior to that, Chris was the executive director of the AAO, that is the American Association of Orthodontists. Chris has been involved in the dental industry for quite a while. He's a graduate of the University of Maryland, and he maintains that CAE that I talked about, which is the Certified Association Executive designation. And that is actually for elevating standards in the association industry, enhanced individual performance. And he lives in St. Louis, Missouri, although Chris, I think you are moving to the Washington, D.C. area shortly. Is that correct?
That is correct. Moving home to where the whole family is.
There you go. And he has been married for 35 years, his wife Janice, and daughters are all in Washington, D.C., and that is why he is moving there. So again, welcome Chris and Dr. Bray to the Group Dentistry Now Show. So now that I gave your long bios and accomplishments, I am going to let you do a little speaking. So, Dr. Bray, why don't we talk a little bit about Schulman Group and maybe start at the beginning with the history of Schulman, how they started out as a study club.
Thank you, Bill, very much. And thanks for the introduction. You're very kind. Looking at Schulman, I'll take you back, Bill. It's the late 70s. And a gentleman by the name of Bud Schulman was an accountant and also ran an orthodontic lab company in Washington, D.C. He really enjoyed the orthodontist. And frankly, I think it can be said clearly that Bud loved the orthodontic profession. He really enjoyed it. And as time went on, he began to field a group of people, orthodontists, that were very interested in business and yet at the same time were very high performance, doing high quality, excellent work in orthodontics. So he took a group of them and then over time, Bill, began to develop them meeting and actually sharing with one another what I would call today best practices. And that could be in something business oriented like hiring staff, but it also could be in clinical orientation, looking at a certain type of treatment. But primarily the significant difference at that time, Bill, was that orthodontists were then beginning to look at the business side of the profession. And as we certainly fast forward to today, I mean, I think the business side is being talked about and researched more and more than ever before. But back then, that was pretty unusual. And also getting a group of high achievers together and then sharing information was really not heard of at all. But that's how it got started. And Bud just did a wonderful job over a lot of years. And the group got stronger, more people from, frankly, all over the country. So from East Coast to West Coast. And they would meet typically at least once or sometimes twice a year as a group. They also would have smaller individual meetings based on where they were located. But Bud would really keep a very tight list of people, the names, and then keep a really strong hold on how the meeting was run. And he would, if you could picture Bill, pick out someone, Bob Bray, and say, I noticed on your tax return you did this. Why did you do that? And questions like that typically would not happen in an organization. But he would really drill down and really put people, if you were, on the spot if he thought they were not doing everything they could do to make their business and at the same time, their work excellent. He wanted to make sure you were an excellent orthodontist, meaning doing the best treatment. He appreciated people when they achieved their American Board of Orthodontic status, the diplomate they call it. I mean, it mattered to him that it be done the correct way. And then he, over time, wanted to slow up. And John McGill, who's another real huge leader in orthodontics, he's down in the North Carolina area, and he is a lawyer and also obviously has a lot of clients that are orthodontists. And he managed a group for a period of time. And then soon after that, Ron Redmond, who is an orthodontist and a dear friend, just a great guy, he began to run the group along with a group of board members. And that sort of continued for a considerable time. And if you can picture 2017, if you will, Ron was going to be stepping down. And that's when I came in the picture. And I took over in 2017 as the president and CEO. And at that time, Bill, we were beginning to look into the idea of forming the Schulman Management Group. So if you could picture, the meeting was set up, our annual meeting, with different presentations from outside consultants talking about bringing together the group. And then we were trying to, if you will, share with all the memberships what was going on and trying to encourage them to consider forming a group that would, in essence, work like a very private group, but organized group to manage, if you will, and add value to individual orthodontic practices. That was a lot of talking there. Sorry.
No, that's great. No, I think it puts everything in perspective. So it started out really as kind of an exclusive study club, but it wasn't just clinical. It was also focused on management of the business. And then around 2017, really when you started there, when you took over, so to speak, you started looking at creating this management company. And I guess that's kind of where Chris comes in. Chris, do you want to talk a little bit about Schulman Group on the management side and what that looks like?
Sure. And again, thank you for the opportunity and for your support over these years. Schulman realized that in order to continue to compete in a world where a lot of consolidation with dental groups, orthodontic groups, pediatric groups was happening, that it would be best for them to come together and incorporate as a inside or independently owned DSO to be able to take advantage of all the benefits of a DSO while maintaining their practice independence. I believe April 2018 was when they officially incorporated. I came on in December 19. And we began with doing a strategic plan on what were our goals, what was our structure, because we are different. We are unique into what we are. We are not involved with private equity. Each founding member of Schulman is an equal shareholder in SG Management. And we have structured the entity along the lines of a DSO, but also maintaining member involvement. We at present have 146 members, over 300 practices across 47 states, and it represents in excess of $400 million in revenue. To become a member of Schulman and also now SG Management, there are guidelines. We have a geographic issue. We make sure that our members are geographically based so they're not competing with each other. And there's certain financial guidelines that they have to meet, as well as have to be able to participate in the group. Right now, I work under the direction, obviously, of the board of directors, who are all shareholders. We continue to grow. I've developed a staff team that are working in different aspects of the group. And I know we'll get into later that we've also formed our practice purchasing entity as well, where there'll be Schulman-owned practices in the very soon future. And we've also developed with our practice acquisitions group, we've developed a second entity which will do the day-to-day management of those purchased practices. So the group has been able to, since we've incorporated, we have brought on 23 preferred supplier partners. As part of the management fees, our members are able to participate with Gauge, where we collect common KPIs so we can share that information not only within the membership, but the members can also see how they're doing against the rest of the population. And as you know, data is king. The other program that we have is something called CureMint. CureMint is a web-based or cloud-based ordering platform. So not only are all our preferred supplier programs in CureMint, that also each individual member that has orders from off companies at various times are able to input that as well. So with all members going through and purchasing through CureMint, we know what they're purchasing and how much, which is great data when we perform our due diligence and work with some preferred suppliers. The third thing that we've just added as part of this is a human resources element. HR for Health has come on, and each member is part now of HR for Health. So we have centralized human resources for the group.
Excellent. So, you talked a lot about the services that are being provided from these preferred these vendor partners. I know Dr. Bray mentioned it earlier when he was going over the history of Schulman Group, but the meetings are certainly important too. The sharing of knowledge from the various members. You probably had one of the last meetings of 2020 before COVID really started up. You have an annual meeting, Dr. Bray or Chris, do you want to talk a little bit about the value of that and what other types of events do you all do?
Chris can certainly add some additional things, but since he's come on, we're even doing more and more things through technology so that the whole group is getting webinars and different things available to them weekly. So that's really special in my mind, Bill. But I think the annual meeting usually runs about a week. And so it's a big chunk of time, and it gives the members a chance to really sort of sit around with each other and not only spend some time in the classroom, which we usually run somewhere between 7 o'clock in the morning to about 1 o'clock, but also a lot of time just to sit around and talk about what's going on in their total lives, which really makes the group a really focused group on sharing information about life in general. I like it because of those things, and I think it gets stronger each year because the group, Bill, is made up of really a wonderful group of givers, that as you go through life, you run into certain people. And I think the Schulman docs are really quite giving, and their spouses and families. You can post up a question on the listserv, and gosh, within an hour or so, you have 12 or 15 individuals responding, telling you how to take care of this or that. So it makes it, in my opinion, very special. And then we also have a team meeting, which usually is in September, August, where we also bring staff members together. And I think the group, thanks to Chris, is doing a wonderful job there. We're getting more staff members involved. And as you know, Bill, it's one thing to have the leader have some knowledge, but we really realize how important it is to infuse the staff so that they are part of what I would refer to almost like an open book management. We're really trying to get the staff members to not only hear what is being said, but take the opportunity to say, geez, I talked to so-and-so out in California, and although I'm in New Jersey, she had a good idea, or he had a good idea of how they get set up for a bonding or how they handle a new patient call. And there's just not a price, in my opinion, Bill, that you can put on that, because then they're getting not only, your individual office and your staff meetings, but they're beginning to hear from other people across the country. And you just can't help but to grow very, very quickly.
Dr. Bray, you brought up a really good point, and I'll get back to the meeting in a second. But Dr. Bray likes to say that Schulman is really all about success through sharing. And although we are considered a medium-sized DSO, because of our nimbleness and the way that our members are involved, we're able to do a lot of sharing of business and clinical items. For example, each member is required twice a year to submit pearls. And we have a format that they posted online. So every month there's new ideas on marketing, clinical, social media, whatever it happens to be, staff management, of things that they've done in their own practices that they share with the rest of the group. And of course, this is all searchable online at any point. Members also, we just launched a new social media program where members have assigned a person from their team who deals with social media. A couple times a year, they're responsible for posting and sending us media about their practice that we send out through all the Schulman practices, which is starting to extend or expand the Schulman brand. Sharing online, as Dr. Bray mentioned, it's actually a listserv that we have going on right now, which is really incredible. Yesterday, there was there was a whole issue about some things with a certain product out there, and they wanted to find, how are you doing with this? How's it going with this? Or we just got our 3D printer in, we're having some issues with this kind of resin, whatever. So it's a constant sharing of information. I think that's possible because they're not competitors. So they're growing and sharing with shared information. The other thing that we have available is our common documents. Somebody has a form on staff dismissals or an RFP or whatever. We keep all these on the member website so they have access to them. And, Dr. Bray, when he was president at the AAO, was probably, I would say, a pioneer in terms of getting the staff engaged. Staff are so essential to today's orthodontic practice. And we started a staff engagement program earlier in the year where members can register their staff so they have access to educational and product information, because the staff order most of the products. So they're able to really help the doctor take advantage of all the benefits that Schulman has through these preferred supplier agreements and to be able to share educational knowledge.
That's some good feedback there, Chris. And I think there's a lot going on as far as the management services and the sharing of knowledge. And it looks like you've got not just live meetings, you have online discussions, and not just the annual meeting, but you have webinars and things like that. Let's talk a little bit about the other piece really to SG management, which is the practice acquisition side. So it's not just about the members that join. You're actively seeking orthodontic practices to acquire. Talk a little bit about how that all works and then what the strategy is.
Sure. Well, I'm going to let Chris talk after this, Bill. But I just wanted to say one thing. I'm glad you brought it up, meaning acquisition, because when we had a meeting, our annual meeting goes back to 2000 and I think 17 and 18. Before Chris came on, I said that we could have an actual meeting up in my room about those that would be interested in talking about acquisitions or maybe selling their practices. And I was amazed. I mean, we had so many people up in the room was overflowing with people. And it made me realize then, Bill, that the group, again, it's a wonderful group of givers and sharers of things, but they had some pride in their organization that they built, and they want to then make sure it's passed on to some people that really care about it. And I was really struck by that. And I'll let Chris take it from there, but I think it surprised me that so many would actually be interested. I just sort of threw it out there and thought I was forming these different committees. I said, well, I'm going to try one on acquisition. And it really has been wonderful what Chris and the company have done. So go ahead, Chris. I just wanted to say that because it blew me away at the time, Bill.
A lot more interest than you thought, probably.
Yes.
That's really 2 points. We have members that when it's time for them to retire or start thinking about retiring, they know they have a home where the standards of their practice will be maintained. But there's also been a tremendous amount of interest from practices outside of the group. So if you can, when we did our initial business plan in 2019 and then extended again in 2020, the first thing was to structure SG Management LLC as a DSO with preferred provider agreements and that type of thing. Phase 2 was going to be the actual formation of an entity where we would, the shareholders who are the members would own practices collectively. That actually has jump-started in time. That was going to be year 3, but we're already actively pursuing. And the way that that's worked is we have formed an entity where we have a chief operating officer who's just retired Schulman member, Dr. Ann Todd, who is working with myself and our practice acquisition committee and representatives from Waller Lahr Group, Mike White and Ben Miller from Clifton Larson Allen, and Bagus, who is our financial person. And we've put this group together where we've developed a template where we are working with individual practices and developing programs on how they wish to enter into being purchased over time. Right now, we have, as to date, we have several practices with letter of intents out there. The way that it works is we receive either from members within the group or from outside of the group, they submit an application, and then our committee engages with them and say, okay, what are you looking for? How long are you still willing to stay on to the practice? We evaluate the practice based on Schulman guidelines, certain profitability. They're an excellent worm practice. We do site visits to make sure that it's a practice that fits within the Schulman standards. And we're also doing it based on geographic location. We're attempting to build, and we will be building centralized areas. For example, we have one of our members who has 6 offices, and once that comes into the fold, we'll be adding practices in that area so we can manage them effectively. We have some owners that are saying, look, I want to be out in 2 years. So we have an active program where we're actually getting applications from associates that we will bring into the practices to transition once the original doctor transitions out. We also are looking at, we have a member here who says, so I want to stay on for 5 years, but I want to start the process now. So we structure the acquisition really based on not just the Schulman guidelines, but based on the needs of that doctor. So if you're selling to Schulman, you can be comfortable knowing that the philosophy and how you run your practice is still going to be there for your patients and your future patients. And at the same time, it's a group of orthodontists that are buying the practice, not private equity or some outside entity. So the integrity, because all orthodontists are very, very active and very well known in their communities, and they want to maintain that standard because this is something that they built.
So let's pivot a little bit there and talk about what you are seeing as a group, as SG Management, maybe what you see with orthodontic practices within SG and then beyond, like versus the general population. I think a lot of our audience would be really interested to hear how your members are faring given the COVID crisis. Now things are starting to open up again. And then kind of almost looking at what you're hearing outside of the group and the differences. Chris, do you want to start with that, with some trends?
Absolutely. One thing just to start out with that, when COVID hit big time right after our annual meeting and offices were shut down for 2 months, because of our nimbleness, we were able to immediately organize town hall meetings online, through Zoom, with various experts in the field, initially to talk about the 3 phases of the stimulus package and how that impacted, human resources issues, small business loan issues, all the things that came up, we were able to leverage our abilities with folks such as Ali from HR for Health and Mike White from Clifton Larson Allen and others to get on Zoom meetings with our members to help them through those initial periods. Then as the members were starting to look to reopen, what does that orthodontic practice look like? So we immediately were able to get a lot of materials for them, and through the member sharing and through some experts that we brought on, Andrea Cook, for example, and others, to talk about OSHA issues, things preparing for your patients coming back, we were able to do that as well. The one thing, and now we're, as Dr. Bray said, we do a lot of webinars, but we're doing them more on practice management things and others as people have started to reopen. Some interesting statistics, as I said, we collect, there's an outfit called Gauge, which collects common KPIs from orthodontists across the country, and then a subgroup with Schulman. As we said, every member has access to Gauge, so we collect all their KPIs. And considering that most offices were shut down for 2 months, when we compare 2020 statistics to 2019 statistics, net production, members are down just 5%. In terms of net collection, down 6%. Total starts is only down 1%. So we're ahead of the general population, but considering that offices were closed for 2 years, 2 months, I think it's important to know that things could be a lot more dire, but I think our members were able to, with the support of the way that they work together as a group, to get right back into the saddle and starting again. And I think moving forward, the other thing is how members how orthodontists are interacting with their patients. Teledentistry, has been around for a while now, but people have really kind of been dipping their toes in it a little bit. Well, COVID forced members to figure out how to communicate with their patients when they couldn't come into the office. So we had small groups of members and working with dental monitoring, Simplify, SmileSnap, and other areas. Our preferred practice management system, which is Ortho2 Edge, has now introduced a new video component as well. So we were able to work with our members and kind of experiment with these different formats. So now the members are comfortable with this new element to their offices, which, as we all know, will probably stay around now, as we move forward.
Excellent. So, those numbers sound really encouraging. I'll tell you, I mean, those are not the numbers of certainly the general dentist population for sure. So why don't we talk a little bit about what kind of adjustments you made as a group, coming out of COVID to really get to the point where you're only down, 5%, starts are only down 1%. I mean, that's really incredible considering being shut down for 2 months. Can we talk a little bit about that? Why don't we start with Dr. Bray? What did you do in your practices, and what did the group do as a whole?
Sure, be glad to, Bill. I think, first of all, I'd like to just stress the uniqueness for me of the group is just the character of the individuals. They really are, Bill, just wonderful ladies and gentlemen. I mean, they're just really good people. And I wanted to stress things like I mentioned the American Board of Orthodontists. There's a vast majority of our members that are diplomats of the American Board. They care about that. They want excellence. Keystone Society that I mentioned earlier with the foundation, they're all givers to that. I mean, I'm going to say it's close to 90-some%. They're just real good. Well, that makes a difference, in my opinion, as we move ahead, Bill, because, my belief always is that, you want to go real fast in something, you go alone. But, if you want to really go far, you go together. And that's what they did. They went into that COVID situation in such a way that they just banded together and began sharing every day, every hour of the day, what they learned or what went on. And so we would have these discussions going on literally 24/7 because of the time zones and different things. And you'd wake up and see a whole new group of information that you had to go through, but yet at the same time that was right there for you so that you could begin to adjust in your individual office and your individual team members, sharing with them what's going on. And so they not only pivoted very quickly, they really shared so much that it just was a win-win for everybody. And so really there wasn't a staff member that would bring up something that there wasn't a plan already in place. I chuckle. One individual came up with an idea of getting a stoplight outside their office so that it flashed either red or green so people knew whether it was appropriate time for them to come in for their appointment. I mean, just not that that's actually the answer for everything for everybody. Everybody's in a different situation. But Bill, it was a type of thing where the information just, I think everybody almost felt like it was trying to drink from a fire hose. It just was so much, but it was great because Chris also organized it in such a way that we would continually have more and more things that we could introduce right away to the practice. So that's, what I really loved about the group and felt so good about it. And I think that's why the numbers have responded so well with actual data to show that the group really did adapt and adjust very quickly. And I think that's remarkable about what they do.
So I've got a couple other questions here, and then if I missed anything, just any final thoughts. But where are we now? I mean, what does the ortho industry look like right now? What do we think Q3 and Q4 of this year look like? And if you even want to make predictions into 2021, if you're in the prediction game. But you're just kind of curious as a whole, what are the opportunities? What are the challenges? Maybe we could talk, Chris, you could start, and then we'll have Dr. Bray follow up.
Well, I think from a organization or company perspective, our challenges, which I'm very, very positive on, are that this particular model of a DSO could be kind of the standard for those that don't wish to go the private equity route. We definitely are unique, but I think based on the progress we've made in such a very short time, shows that there are a lot of, whether it's orthodontists, pediatric dentists, oral surgeons, whomever, that want to have the advantages of a DSO, and not just a buying group, but a DSO in all of its forms, but to still be able to maintain the integrity and independence of practice, I think is going to be a very positive thing as we continue to grow in that area. I think in terms of the orthodontic profession moving forward, just based on the statistics that I'm seeing in the downside, orthodontists are not generally down that much given the fact they were closed for 2 months. So I think that shows that there's still a tremendous interest from the consumer in orthodontic services. There's a lot of players in the field now, both, direct as well as larger players and all that. But I think that the market worldwide, and particularly in the United States, has yet to be fully tapped. So I think there's a very bright future for orthodontists. I mean, it's interesting. There was a period of time where there were so many new orthodontic schools opening and so many new orthodontists coming out. And so where are all these folks going to work? Well, now there's a shortage of associates, and people are looking for associates across the board. DSOs, everybody's looking for associates. So I think that the future of orthodontics is very bright, and I think it's just going to continue as we evolve.
Dr. Bray, maybe we'll ask you for final thoughts on this.
Well, I'm right in line with what Chris said. I mean, I think, Bill, we're really, people always call the golden years of orthodontics. They would make a comment about it, but I think we're there still. There are wonderful opportunities. I think people in our country, in our area, let's say of even South Jersey, people are concerned and want to have a better smile. And Bill, that translates to them coming to see us. And I think that's terrific. I do think all of us have to adjust with, let's say, the times we're open, available for people. I think trying to have flexible payment plans for people. But again, I think the orthodontist typically has always been very much ahead of the game in adjusting and adapting. And so I think it's going to be very good moving forward. And I think we're very fortunate because people do want to have a better smile, and that is important. And I think it's going to continue to play that way, Bill.
So encouraging news. I appreciate both you, Dr. Bray, and Chris, spending some time with us today and really giving us some background on Schulman Group management, really the history up until now. The fact that you're doing practice acquisitions is really exciting and interesting. Some of the services that you're providing your members, and just what's going on in the ortho industry. I really think it gives me certainly hope for the future. So again, we thank today the Executive Director of Schulman Group Management LLC. That's Chris Varnas. Thanks for being here, Chris, and Dr. Bob Ray, who is the chairman and CEO of Schulman Group. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Yep.
Very
Bye-bye.
grateful. Thank you.
The Group Dentistry Now Show has listeners across North and South America, Europe, Asia, and Australia. If you like our show, subscribe today and please tell your colleagues about us.